Oh my god, why is so much people recommending me Harvesect? Jesus, I already know I'm gonna. Hello, this is Cotton Stoops, and welcome back to another Lumian Legacy HTC video. And today's video is one of the most highly requested videos I've ever made, and this is on Harvesect. Harvesect has been one of the best rising stars of this metagame so far, and has proved itself to be really strong. So with that out of the way, this is how to use and counter Harvesect, from counters and checks to teammates, as well as the sets Harvesect can run, and the many weaknesses, resistances, immunities, and roles Harvesect can play. This video has everything you need to know on how to use and counter Harvesect. Basically, the first thing you should know about Harvesect is the role that Harvesect plays, and this is pretty easy to answer because of its base stats. Its base stats are pretty simple, with its bad stuff being its range attack and speed. Not too much. 34 range attack, never use it. 56 speed while being able to outspeed some walls, or rather some loomians like Himber and sluggish Sedimars. It doesn't really outspeed anything else, but it does have a good melee attack and range defense stat of 77 and 100. 77 is not really the best in terms of defense wise, but it is comparable to stuff like Valkyrie, Zeppelin, Wintrix, or rather the more bulkier wall breakers as of right now. And 100 melee attack is definitely very decent for something like this, which I'll be talking about later in its role. And of course, it has high HP and high melee defense, and you might notice its low energy stat of 0. Its high HP stat of 116 is really high, and 119, both of these compared together, makes Harvesect from one of the more bulkier melee walls in the game right now. But its best thing, or rather its most controversial thing, is its ability Life Force. This makes it so Harvesect cannot be energy stalled, but it also does make Harvesect a lot more prone to getting hit very badly and cannot recover from it. So, what role does Harvesect play? Well, despite its ability Life Force, it can be a very bulky, semi-strong Loomian on your team and can fulfill a lot of defensive slots that you might not want to run for dedicated walls. That out of the way, I'll be talking about Harvesect's weaknesses, resistances, so let's get along with that. Harvesect's typing of Spirit and Bug is pretty decent. We have 5 weaknesses to Light, Ice, Airs, Ancient, and Spirits. All of these typings are somewhat common. Light type moves coming from stuff like Valkyrie, Luminami, Phage. Ice type moves coming from stuff like Tongilin, Mocho, Himber, and Wintrix. Earth types like Zeppelin, Wintrix, Stratosaurus, Snegoop, Sorel, and Nemore. Ancient types like, well, mainly only Joltooth, Obsidian, and other spirit types, so stuff like Revenine and other Harvesects. However, it does have some good 6 resistances to Plant, Earth, Electric, Toxic, and Bug, and Typeless. Plant types, well, mainly only Totab is your best plant type to switch in on, as well as Boneki. Earth types, or rather Earth type moves coming from stuff like Ferroglyph, as well as Borok and Sedimars and Tyrex. Electric type moves coming from stuff like Joltooth and Zulong, as well as Phage and Elephage. You do have to watch out for those guys because most of those can hit you super effectively, so yeah. Toxic type moves coming from stuff like Venilin, Barblast. Bug type move users coming from stuff like Deladrix, other Harvesects. Typeless type moves mainly only from Taoshinu, or some stuff you should be switching in on. But you do have a really good major resistance to Dark, which is obviously pretty good because you can absorb slapdowns, or rather not absorb, but be the bulky hitter to get hit by slapdowns, which is obviously pretty good. You can also switch in on Dark Surges as well as other slapdowns. Just like all other spirit types, it does have an immunity to Brawler. You might notice that this can completely wall Totab, as well as being a really good stop to stuff like Wrestling and C.B.O. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's talk about Harvesect sets. So let's talk about that. So the first set and only set that you can run is the offensive set with the ability Life Force. Life Force is mainly the only ability because it's the only ability. And the moveset of choice, you can run Parasitize, Soulstorm. These are your main stab moves. Bulk Up is obviously pretty good because it can help you set up along the wall breakers if you're not running Driving Force, so you're not completely screwed. Driving Force is so we can get the wall breakers out, or if you want to predict a switch from something that you do not want to fight against, use Driving Force for that. And obviously Driving Force can be used for a lot more utility options And Earthquake is the last move that you can run. Obviously, you can replace this for Parasitize or Driving Force. Earthquake is mainly here so we can hit fire types, and we can hit not ancient, but metal types as well without running Driving Force. So yeah, it is also a lot stronger than Driving Force, so it is a thing to consider. And the personality, very brawny, clumsy, sluggish, very brawny to max out as much damage with our moves, so we can run Parasitize with very brawny, so we can get as much HP from Parasitize as much as possible. Clumsy and sluggish, we're not using any range attack, and sluggish is so we cannot decrease any defenses. And the item of choice can be heavy armor or the shield, choice of pearl, health amulet, or power cuffs. The heavy items are really good because, well, Harvesect doesn't really have an energy stat, so it benefits from running these heavy items. So yeah, health amulet can also cancel out the life force ability, which is obviously pretty good, which also doesn't limit you to running Parasitize on every Harvesect. And choice of pearl is obviously pretty good because you can run this pearl and hopefully you're not going to be having any bad matchups against the stuff that you get hit super effectively. And overall, these are all really good items. And yeah, and the TPs, 196 HP can be a 196 melee attack, but generally 200 HP is to max out your HP stat, of course, and 56 range defense with the 200 HP TPs at level 50 battles will let you have a 2-hit KO, or rather survive 1 hit from a smart Ancient Essence Elemental Burst Zulong. So yeah, that is a thing to consider. And 200 or 196 melee attack can be the leftovers, but it's generally the stat you really want to invest in. And 104 speed, if you do not want to run that range defense investment, is to outspeed Venolins or Venolins that are not running speed at all. So yeah, while Venolin is getting out of the metagame pretty quickly, this is something to take into consideration. And of course, the 48 speed, if you do not want to run that, is leftovers from the 56 range defense. Overall, you can run some other sets that like Robust Clever Harvesect that generally doesn't focus on damage but generally focuses on walling stuff. So yeah, you can try and run that, but I recommend this set. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Harvesect's counters and checks as well as the teammates, so let's get along with that. Offensive counters and checks to Harvesect are pretty simple. Generally, you want to run stuff that are air types, ice types, and metal types, and light types. Stuff like Wintrix, Zeppelin, and Amare, they're all pretty good because they're all offensive or defensive air types that can switch in on Harvesect consistently, take advantage of its low melee attack stat, and then of course deal a massive amounts of damage to it. Also, you can run an ice type like Mocho or Himber. Mocho is definitely really good because it can hit Harvesect in its low range defense side. So yeah, Valkyrie and Eclipse are great stuff because they can switch in on Soulstorm, and obviously they can deal a lot of damage with their light type moves. Eclipse is a lot more scarier because you do have to watch out for Parasitize. Valkyrie is a lot more safer because most Harvesects won't be clicking Earthquake and Driving Force every single turn, so Valkyrie should have an easier time switching in. And some defensive counters and checks to Harvesect are a lot more simple as well. You generally want to run stuff that will resist Harvesect's coverage, stuff like Eleguana, Obsidian, not Demare, but Stratosaur and Luminami. Luminami is obviously pretty good because it is immune to Soulstorm and is generally really good against Earth type coverage, and of course can be really good to hit it super effectively. The same story goes for Obsidian, Eleguana, and Stratosaur. Obviously, Eleguana is weak to Earthquake, so you do have to watch out for that, but other than that, these guys are pretty good for defensive counters and checks to Harvesect. But some offensive counters and checks, or rather teammates, not counters and checks to Harvesect, are a lot more simple too. You want to generally run stuff that will break the defensive counters and checks to Harvesect. Stuff like Valkyrie, Samurai, Eclipse, and Tatab. Yeah, I know, Samurai. These guys are all pretty good. Samurai can hit almost, well, actually all of the defensive counters and checks super effectively. Thunder Chomp against Stratosaur, Plunge against Eleguana, and I'm pretty sure it has Steel Crusher for Obsidian. which is obviously pretty good as well, and third enchant for Luminami. And Tatab also has a pretty good matchup against most of the stuff that Harvesect is weak to. It can have a really good matchup against Stratosaur, good matchup against Luminami and Iliguana. It just suffers from the Obsidian matchup. Valkyrie is also pretty good here because it breaks pretty much everything that I said in the defensive counters and checks. It's just Valkyrie's not really the best, so I completely understand. And Eclipse also being pretty good. It is immune to Harvesect's weakness to Light and Spirit, so that's pretty good as well. You can also break Iliguana as well, that's pretty good too, and as well as Luminami. So yeah, and some defensive counters and checks, or teammates. I keep saying counters and checks to Harvesect. So yeah, these are pretty simple as well. You do want to run stuff that will generally help out Harvesect's weaknesses. Iliguana is obviously one of the best candidates. It is resisting light, electric, air, and as well as a lot of other stuff, and ancient and spirit too. So that is something to take into consideration. Chartiki and Barblast are also pretty good as well. Chartiki can be a good range tank along with Iliguana, and Barblast is also pretty nice for the extra melee support that Harvesect generally doesn't handle too well on its own. So yeah, with that out of the way, I'm going to be talking about the conclusion and my closing statements, so let's get along with that. So yeah, overall I think Harvesect is one of the better stuff in the metagame. Well, I do think it is one of the better stuff. Well, no, Harvesect in my opinion is a perfectly fine, good meta Loomian. It might be reaching the A tier for me, but I generally think it's a top A-. Generally what Harvesect has is really strong. Its matchups against a lot of the stuff in the metagame is pretty good too. So yeah, run Harvesect if you really want to. So yeah, with that out of the way, like the video and subscribe if you're into these kind of videos. I do have a lot of these other videos as well, and a lot more to come. So yeah, join the Discord, and remember, Zulong is still a dumpster fire.